Welcome back, everybody. It's another episode of The Mindful CEO. I'm your co-host, Chris Angel, and I'm joined, of course, by the handsome Aaron Hendon.
Ooh,
How are
I'm
you, sir?
handsome today.
Oh,
That-
well,
Today
you
is
look like
that.
me, so in some ways I'm backwardsly complimenting myself.
You are. This is the we are the twin show. You, I have one other friend on where I live on my island where I live that looks exactly like me. I ran into him the other day and I thought, oh fuck, there. I I was like, how is that me? It was just so weird to see me over there where he was.
That's hilarious.
He looks more like me than you do, which is something, right? Um, Yeah, so it's great. Thanks for the intro, Chris. Thanks for being here, everybody.
Uh,
Our guest today is Dr. Kevin Gazzara. He is an expert, a leadership coach, but also an expert in say it again, positive intelligence.
Positive intelligence.
Positive intelligence, right? Which is really, I'm really interested in this because it's the first time I'm being introduced to it. I think we are all familiar with emotional intelligence at this point as a concept. Despite the fact that it's rampantly missing
Yeah.
in any
Right.
sort of leadership capacity globally. That while at least we know it's not there, it's not missing that it's missing in a lot of cases. But positive intelligence has been missing that it's missing for me. I didn't know that there was this thing called positive intelligence. So Kevin, why don't you just take a couple of minutes, introduce yourself, and then we can dive in and get into positive intelligence and how it makes a difference in being a mindful CEO.
Sure. Thanks, Chris and Aaron. So I would say, so I've been a positive intelligence. I've been a coach for the last, I've probably coached for the last 20 years or so. I spent 20 years, or actually 28 years in corporate America, worked for Transamerica, but I worked for Intel for about 18 years. My background is in engineering and business. I did all my doctoral work in organizational leadership. That's really where my passion has been. But I like the techie stuff. So, I can talk nerd. So I typically get most of the people I end up coaching are tech people. But I spent 18 years at Intel. The first 8 years I did product management. I was a GM. I was a product manager. But the last 10 years, I managed Intel's management leadership development for the world. So we used to do 2,500 managers and leaders in 10 different countries. And when I retired from Intel in 2007 to start my firm, Magna Leadership Solutions, took two of my colleagues with me. We started up the firm. This is our 17th year, going to be 18th year, and we do management leadership development programs. We have something called the Leading Forward Academy. But what's happened is, as we've been doing this for the last 17 years, what's happened is there's been a lot of need for the people that go through the program for additional coaching. So I went back and did all my ICF certifications, and then I got certified to do positive intelligence. And positive intelligence is probably the easiest way to describe it is it's taken the foundation of all the great work that Howard Gardner had done, as well as Daniel Goleman back in the 80s and 90s. And it's brought that together along with positive psychology that Martin Seligman did at University of Pennsylvania, a lot of neuroscience work like David Rock has done. And it's really brought it all together into an operating system. And I think the easiest way to describe it would be it's moving from anyone that's studied or has an interest in emotional intelligence. It's moving from this descriptive methodology, like here's your emotional intelligence quotient, to a prescriptive methodology of how do I improve? How do I get better at this? How do I become more mindful, more present? How do I get in the zone? How do I get into this concept of flow, right? Where I'm really in the zone. And it's designed to do that. And I've been teaching that for the last 3 or 4 years. In fact, I just finished a program with 125 managers for a large company that we took all year to do that, because we did it with 17 different, what they call pods, and you do it in small 6 week chunks.
Nice.
Wow.
All right, good. So,
Yeah.
so it's funny. So we hear the word operating system, and it's anyone younger than me for sure, has zero question about what an operating system does. Although I don't even know that that's true. Just a little ramble for a sec. I guess my kids know I know what operating system is because I used to use a DOS computer, and we know the difference between DOS operating system and Mac, and we grew up through the levels of operating systems, right? But do our kids know what an operating system is? I mean, do they just turn on the computer and it's just a computer? It's either a Mac or it's a Windows, and they don't actually relate to there's a difference in the operating system? How do our
Well,
kids
they probably don't think about it, right? They don't probably, it's just, you turn it on and it's there. And let me kind of use some synonyms that I think might resonate with people that maybe are not our age, and it would be, a methodology, a structure,
right?
a model, a series of processes put together, and putting those together kind of creates this, what I would call the operating system.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, I got zero problem with the operating system. I was just like I remember my kids ran into a telephone. It took them, 30 minutes to figure out what it was. Like what. There's no context. Like they've hadn't even seen it in movies. And there's no context to roll down the window anymore. That's not I mean, they still say roll down the window, but they don't know what that means. So they say operating system, but it's true. So and you could look at it like, even if we just keep it as operating system, it is sort of our own operating systems, we relate to our own operating systems the way our kids relate to computer operating systems. That is, it's just what it is. We just wake up in the morning and we're going. We're either a Windows or a Mac or whatever. We're a Kevin, I'm an Aaron, you're right, and we have our own operating system, and it's invisible to us. It's not something that's programmable. It's not something that's adjustable in any way, and you really are talking about giving a new set of instructions to the operating system so that you get different outputs, that we are in fact infinitely malleable and you can move shit around. It's not a Mac where it's a closed system. It's really more of an open system where you can add on or take away or adjust the programming. That's really what you're talking about with positive intelligence, is adjusting the programming.
Yeah, and the thing I would say, Aaron, is it's not designed to change who you are. It's designed for you to be aware of who you are, and I'll give you the necessary tools or processes to change the things that you have a desire to change. Right. So if you're a procrastinator, and you understand, what Shirzad talks about, the 10 saboteurs, the things that hold us back. Once you kind of understand what the strength of each of those is, in the book or in the program, in the programs that we do, you can learn how to address them, and not only address them, but get a deeper understanding of why these are happening to you. So for example, if you had a controller saboteur, there's 10 different ones, but if you had that one, getting a deeper understanding of why having that degree of control is so important to you, and then how it affects people in a positive way and how it affects people in a negative way, and being able to adjust it so it fits you. We're not trying to change who you are. We're trying to do is make you aware so that you can get better results, right? I mean, I think generally everybody wants to get better results. And if they're willing to invest the time, they can do it. It just doesn't happen. It's life is not a spectator sport, right? You have to spend some time in investing in yourself.
I feel like one of the challenges with that is, and I think that's true. I just think about the way it is. People want results, but they don't slow down enough to make the changes necessary to get those results. So we say, like, I could go to the company I was just at, walk through the building, and there are posters all around the office talking about how culture eats strategy for breakfast. Culture eats, and other types of sayings that sort of nod or wink to positive intelligence, these expressions of positive intelligence, like culture. You think culture and you go, that would really be the expression of people having some positive intelligence and showing up for each other in a way that feels like teamwork. But then you look at like how the day-to-day operations of that business behave, and it's like, let's just keep cramming it through, trying to force a result. And so I think there's a breakdown between the study of positive intelligence and how we bow to it as a good idea, but then our actual behavior on a day-to-day basis doesn't honor that. Thoughts?
Yeah, I would say, changing our habits. If you've read any of the materials by, Charles Duhigg or Atomic Habits, that book, both of those books are incredibly good. I would say changing your habits is really, really difficult. And, I spent almost 30 years, Chris, in the corporate world. And yes, you look at all the posters and everything else on the walls, and what you really have to look at is you have to look at the actions. Are they complementary to the thing that they're posting? And I would say, not all companies, but I'd say a good portion of the companies have well, I'd say all companies have good intentions, right? That they want to grow.
Of course.
Actually putting it into play, when push comes to shove in the critical areas, when you have to make that really difficult decision, the best companies are going to take the longer term view rather than kind of what I would call the Wall Street model of, being successful every 90 days. And if you maintain that, you may look successful for a short period of time, but long term you can't get that growth that's necessary. So you really do have to look at the culture, what's said and what's being done. The one thing I will say is, I spent 18 years at Intel. Intel had a very, very strong culture. It's one of the things that was attracted me to it. And the stuff that was on the walls and on the back of our badges, with regard to our values and so forth. I would say a majority, a very high percentage of the managers really emulated that, right? And it's not do what I say, it's, watch me and then emulate what I've done. And it's really hard to do, particularly in situations where you have to make very difficult decisions that are going to have negative impact, negative Wall Street impact that could affect your stock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just reading, just inside that world of being true to yourself, being authentic, which is, I don't know where authenticity comes. I mean, I can make the connection for authenticity inside what you two just talked about. Are you acting with integrity with who you say you are? Is it a consistent conversation, which I suspect, Kevin, is what you do when you implement positive intelligence. That's the purpose of you meeting with those 7 people in those pods for 6 weeks, is that their actions then begin to line up with what they created as their intended future. Because very few companies start with a future called, yeah, we're going to cram the results down people's throats until they quit and we're just a churn and burn. No one starts like that.
Yeah.
Right. And I was just reading that the shareholders of Costco have overwhelmingly voted against ditching their DEI efforts, in a current climate where corporate America is inside whatever madness we now live in, has decided DEI is, something to stamp out. Costco said, no, fuck that, which is so resonant with their expression. It's so consistent with who I think of them as. It was just so heartening that they are walking the walk in that way. And I think, that's, it's not just on the back of their badge. It's not just on the wall. It's like, no, I got it. This is actually good for our bottom line down the road. And everything that they do is, sort of shakes up the standard Wall Street, squeeze every last bit out of every single fucking thing until it dies and then sell it off in parts and move on kind of world that we live in.
Yeah. And I mean, Costco is a great example, Aaron, that they have a very strong culture, and I think I think you really have to look at the numbers as well. And this is important at Intel, is that the numbers don't just necessarily mean the bottom line numbers, but you have to look at a combination of the bottom line numbers and the degree of retention, employee satisfaction, and so forth. And the combination of those two is really kind of the determinant of what a great culture is, right? If you have people that want to come there, that want to stay there, that are feeling that they're treated equitably, that they're treated equally, and at the same point in time, you're contributing to grow the company. That's a great place to be. I think too often what we see is we see a lot of other companies that are kind of, have the posters on the wall, but the bottom line is, the retention, job satisfaction, engagement, is not there. But the numbers are there, and that makes Wall Street happy. The problem is you can't sustain that for a long period of time. Eventually you run out of people to hire, and the people that are working there, if they're not happy, they're the salespeople for you. They're the ones that are going to tell you, "Hey, I work at Costco. Come here," or they work at Sam's Club, and they're going to tell you, it's a good place to save money. I'm not sure I would want to work there, right? And I think the other thing is there's tons and tons of studies that really do show that if you have really engaged employees, that's where you're going to get the productivity and the creativity that you want to be successful. And I think too many companies are at the mercy of the boards, right? And they're pushing them for the 90-day windows.
Yeah, that feels true.
Kevin, talk to me about what are some examples of practices or things? So, on the show, we deal with that tension between mindful and CEO. That's literally exactly what we're talking about, that tension between 90-day results and long-term thinking. And God, I was listening to Norman Fisher today. He was a Zen author. I don't know, Zen author. He writes about, he's a brilliant Zen speaker, author. And he was commenting on Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations, Capitalism. And he was giving a talk during the pandemic that I was listening to. And he was talking about how even Adam Smith was clear that capitalism at some point would need to, without, it needs to take on the view of the benefit to the organization, to the whoever's doing the selling, to the producers, the owners of the means of production, need to look at the benefit, need to expand the view of what is good for the company to what is good for what's good for more people. I'm saying this really badly, and I listened to this conversation in the shower once, and I'm saying it more as a point for us, Chris, to go back to and something I want to explore. But I forgot how I got into this conversation, but I wanted for you to look at, give me some examples of implementing positive intelligence and what would we be looking at implementing?
Yeah, so I think probably the easiest way is let me kind of start off with the saboteurs and talk a little bit about the saboteurs. So Shirzad Chamine, who's the author of Positive Intelligence, says that there are 10 saboteurs. You have the overarching saboteur, which is the judge, right? That basically is, how you're judging things. And then you have what he calls the accomplice saboteurs. And you have the controller, you have a hyperachiever, the restless saboteur, stickler, pleaser, hypervigilant, the avoider, victim, and hyper-rational. And all of those play a part in feeding the judge. And how you show up in an environment is dependent upon the strength of your saboteurs, right? So that's the one side of your brain. The other side of the brain, you have what he calls the sage brain, and that's really about empathize, explore, innovate, navigate, and activate. Right? It's about taking those things, taking the the voices of the saboteurs and filtering them in such a way that you can get into the sage mindset to kind of move you forward. And I think as both of you know, mindfulness is really not designed as kind of this woo-woo type of thing. I mean, it's really about being present. It's about listening. It's about having that one of the elements of emotional intelligence is having that self-control. It's the awareness, it's the self-control, it's how you react. Are you taking a forward look? Are you taking a backward look? Are you being just in the moment? And the operating system or the positive intelligence model is designed to be able to give you the tools to say, oh, I recognize that. That's the stickler. I'm spending way too much time on this little minutia thing.
Right.
And you don't want to turn off your saboteurs. You just want to kind of keep them at bay. And you want to say, thank you for bringing that up. And by the way, what is it? What do they say that perfection is the enemy of the good kind of thing. And if you have like I'm working with a chief executive officer at the moment, he has a strong stickler. He always wants that additional data. He has a difficult time getting across the finish line. And you have to be able to say at some point in time, this is good enough to get us there. And if you have a really strong stickler in particular for that, it holds you back. Getting that awareness and being able to address it in a positive way, be able to take some risks, really does help move yourself forward, and usually the organization.
That's fabulous. It's when you were talking about the judge and the co-conspirators, no, the co.
The main
Saboteurs.
saboteur and the contributing saboteurs, right?
Contributing saboteurs. Somehow the image of the Hindu gods came in. Like there's different gods for different things. There's all these different people that these different personalities, these different identities that are all competing or all constantly going. And the practice of mindfulness is to notice just exactly what you said, just to notice them. Dan Harris has this interesting dialogue. He just posted a reel about it. He writes about it in 10% Happier as well. But about worry, like if you lose all your worry, then you just sit on the couch and you don't do anything. Like there's this, certainly for me as a New York Jew, there was that big angst of, if I'm not worried about something, then why would I get off the couch? That fear that if I lose I'll lose all my drive. And, so on one hand, so Dan talks about it in the book this way, that he was speaking to his teacher about, look, if I need to make a plane at a certain time, right, I need to have a certain amount of attention on when do I leave and when do I get up, and worried about, do I have to worry about getting a flat, and how, like all those different parts need attention. And and his teacher said, yes, it's true. That's accurate. You do need to give the attention. But once you've given it the attention, how much more attention do you need to give it? You've given it the attention. Now it's time to move on. And so there's this world in which you do want the stickler. There is definitely a world in which good enough is not good enough. Close enough is not close enough. And then there's this world in which close enough is close enough. And you've got to be able to have space for that. And mindfulness, the practice of mindfulness, the practice of meditation, isn't to become a good meditator. It's to be more awake to your life as it is, and to give that space to know when is enough, and when can I trust the universe. And I would suspect that trust and patience and whatever else you want to put there is part of the sage aspects.
Yeah, and I think what you just did is you did a great description of what Shazad would call the hypervigilant saboteur,
Yes.
right? So the hypervigilant and the stickler work kind of hand in hand. The stickler pays attention overly to the details, and the hypervigilant is the kind of the what if saboteur. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
what if this happens, and what if that happens, and I have to get to the airport, and well, what happens if all the planes crash, into the tower? What will I do then? It's like, well, the projecting of what ifs and spending all of your time and energy focusing there, particularly when it's 1 in a billion% chance, is really not a good investment of your time and focus, right? And recognizing that and keeping that saboteur at bay really gives you the ability to use the processes that you put in place, which usually the stickler has helped with, right? Have I ordered an Uber, and have I looked at the traffic, and do I know alternate routes, and what's the worst case scenario? So having all those processes in place should give you that level of confidence. And then you put them to the side, and then you can focus on. I mean, we only the world we live in is a closed system, right? That we only have a certain amount of time and energy and focus, and you can either put it on things that are going to happen once in a million, or you can focus on things that are going to happen once in a one-on-one kind of thing. So
Yeah.
it's the choice is yours. The key is, once again, not to change who you are. It's to be able to focus on the areas that are really going to gain you the level of success as you define success.
I think leadership, as you're sharing this, I just keep thinking about how leadership trickles down. We're talking about mindful CEO, like somebody who's either CEO of their life or CEO of a company. There's leadership implicit in this conversation. And I think leadership trickles down. So when the leader is stuck in a saboteur, like I get the biggest, richest, juiciest payoff from staying in the saboteur that produces me a result. It's comfortable for me. I know this. I know the hypervigilant MO. I know what that sounds like, that feels like. And my team has come to expect that from me, because that's the default place I come from. So no matter what book I read, oh yeah, I read Atomic Habits, but then I show up in my hyper vigilant saboteur, I think this is what trickles down through organizations. It really requires, Aaron, that thing we talk about with the ability to get to the mindful piece, the ability to step back and observe. And if what happened as a leader was you had the experience of practicing mindfulness, practicing observing, that would trickle down to your team, that your team would now be more open to seeing. But as a team member, if you're coming in as a leader and I'm constantly reacting to your hypervigilant person, then that's the thing that trickles down.
Yeah,
I don't know if you see this. I'm assuming you see this as you work with teams. Yeah.
all the time, Chris. The key with the positive intelligence, or emotional intelligence for that matter, it's raising that self-awareness, right? Recognizing that. One of the things that I've done, when I'm coaching executives in particular, and they're stuck in one of these, right? First of all, and we'll give this to the viewers, right? I'll give you a site where you can go in and take the assessment. It's completely free, so you can take it, and there's tons of great information. So once you have an idea of where the strength is of the saboteurs, then you can go address the one. If you try to address all of them, you're never going to be successful. Address the ones they're really causing the problems. But the one thing that I would say, whether it's the hypervigilant or the stickler or whatever, where I can recognize that's happening with the person I'm coaching, whether it's in a team or in a one-on-one, I ask them a very simple question that usually kind of shocks them out of the kind of the moment, is talk to me about what would happen if this energy that you're focusing on this particular element, that you could put it elsewhere. How would you do that? Tell me how you would do that, and what would be the impact. And they usually talk about, well, I could be doing this and this and this and this and this, right? And then I ask them, so which of the two approaches, what you're doing currently and what you recognize, will give you the best advantage for being success? And And 100% of the time they say, well, it's probably
Yeah.
not what I'm doing. So hey, as long as it's not overly critical, so I have one person I coach is in the aerospace industry. You have to pay a little bit more attention there, right? Because you don't want airplanes falling out of the sky. The thing is with him, he's got this amazing team, right? And he has a tendency to want to take more on his own, and then just getting him to talk through that, and talk about his confidence in the team is helpful. The best leaders don't take it all on themselves. The best leaders recognize their strengths and weaknesses, capitalize on their strengths, and then leverage the strengths
Yeah.
of others to kind of fill in the gaps.
Yeah, I think it's the thing we haven't talked about, but it's right there in terms of what leaders miss in terms of trickling down to the team and the space is that, um, after you've handled everything as to the best that you can, do you have room for failure? Do you have room for it to go to that 1 in a million that, it's not that you don't have a plan A and a plan B and maybe even a plan C, but is there room for your self-forgiveness and for forgiveness of others and for, is it what I think would be called a learning enterprise? Like, can you take the results that don't achieve the goal and incorporate the lessons that those failures have produced as victories, that's in fact a step forward, that you were moving toward the intention, whether you not got there or not, you moved toward it, and you can use the lessons. And is there that space of forgiveness and that space of permission to fail? Not that, but if you can't do that for yourself, and I suspect this is the thing that you work with people on, even if it's not explicitly said, that if they can't forgive themselves and move on, there's no room on the team. No one on the team, everyone's hyper vigilant, can't fail all the time. And that's what causes the burnout versus, look, we're all going to move towards this intention the best we can. And we're going to learn from it and we're going to move on. Is there something explicit that you say about that?
Yeah, well, and I think one of the things is to recognize is the failure fatal, right? So most failures are not fatal. The only time failure is really a terrible thing is when you don't take the learning from it, right? And one of the things that Intel did exceptionally, I would say, is we used to have postmortems, to take the learning, so we could get better. But the other thing that we would do is we would do postmortems, but also when I was a product manager, we would kick off and we would do pre-mortems,
I was
you
going to
know?
say, yay.
Yeah,
That's one of my favorite things to do is a premortem. It's
yeah.
really such a you go. I was like, God, is he going to get the premortems? This is
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, you do the pre-mortem, and it's like, okay, a year down the road, we're ready to launch this product, and here's all the stuff that went wrong. And let's talk about, the things that contributed to this kind of crash, we used to call them crash and burns, right? This crash and burn happened, and putting it in place, and then doing that independently, and then being able to bring in elements separately from the post-mortem to say what did we learn in the last project, right? And look at it that way, and you can continually grow. I think the big thing I find with most organizations that I consult or coach with is they're running so fast, they're understaffed, they haven't changed their expectations, even though they have 10 people on the staff instead of the 20 that they used to have. Expectations are still getting raised. They're expecting to do more, and they're burning the people out. And you have to be, I think you have to be realistic about what can be accomplished. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't have what I would call stretch goals, but the thing is, one of the things that we've done, and might be an interesting thing for your listeners, is one of the things I do with any of the people that I coach is I have them do an inventory, right, of what they're working on, right? I want you to do a week inventory, of what you're working on. And typically, I've been doing this for over 20 years. I used to do this at Intel all the time. Um, what they find is that probably 80% of the time that they're working on what we used to call KTBR, keeping the business running, right? And the problem is when you set all these new objectives and goals and so forth for the quarter, you get, people take them on, and they take them on with good intention. But what they don't realize until they do the inventory, they don't realize that of that 50-hour week, maybe you have 10 hours to work on it. And you take
Yeah.
it on as if, it's, a 40 or
As if
50-hour week, right? And once again, if you raise that awareness, then you can say, okay, I've got 10 spare hours, or more likely sometimes like 5 spare hours a week, right? And this project is 500 hours. What is realistic to be able to deliver this? And you need more help or whatever. And we used to call it ZBB, zero-based budgeting. Used to get all the projects that you wanted to accomplish. And we used to go down the list and say, how many hours of this and this and this? And once you exhausted the hours, but you can't get there until people know what their hours are available beyond KTBR, then you just start, moving
Crossing
them,
shit out.
either getting rid of them or you move them to the next quarter. And
It's
we don't
so,
do it. And most organizations don't do that. And I think it's really a disservice to the hardworking employees.
yeah, I think not just the organizations don't do it. That's on the conceptual level. Individuals don't do it. When I have a little workshop I do called Time Management is Bullshit. Because you don't manage time. There's no managing time. It's fucking crazy. How are you going to manage time? Time is going to do what time you have 24 hours. It's like managing the weather. You don't manage the weather. That's not something you manage. If it's raining, you put on a coat. You manage yourself in the weather, and you got to manage yourself in time. And the exact process, I have people time block their day, and they look to see what they're doing. And invariably, one of two things happens when they time block their day. It's one of two things. One is they wind up with like 30, there's 168 hours in a week. So when you do it on a weekly basis, they either have like 30 hours that they don't have accounted for. They wind up with like, they have 30 extra hours that they didn't know that they had, because in their minds, they're just busy all the time. So that's just spent doing bullshit, worrying and busy work, or they've got 200 hours of work and then wonder why they're overwhelmed, but they haven't pared it down. And you go back to Gary Keller. It was great about this was, if it's not in your calendar, it doesn't exist. If you don't have a time block to work it on, right? There's a great program, called oh shit, I can't think of it. Um, oh my God. Something Werner Erhard developed around time, but it was, you make lists of, there's 3 lists that you make. There's things that you're doing now, and that's your calendar. That's the things that are in your calendar. These are the things I'm doing now. And if it's in your calendar, when it comes up to do, you do. And you just run your life off your calendar, and you're doing that work that way. And then there's things I'm not doing now. So you have a place to keep all the things that are not in your calendar, and you review that and you look to see, and that's what you're talking about, those projects that need to be moved to next quarter. They exist somewhere in the not doing now list, so that when you do look to time block your week, you're moving whatever you can. And then there's a separate list of things you're never going to do. The things that, read Moby Dick and whatever, all the things that you want to do with your life that you're never going to do, but it's on a list somewhere. So right over here in never doing now. So it doesn't live taking up mental space. You're never doing this. And you can review that, say, once a month, and look to see, is there anything on there that you do want to move into not doing now that you want to move, or what, but you're responsible for yourself and your, how you do things and when you're going to do it. So you're never managing time. I always did that workshop, the sort of the rug pull on that workshop is, you don't have a time management issue. You have a word management issue. You don't do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. You just have a word problem. And the advantage of this system, whose name I cannot think of. Oh my God, I can't believe I can't think. Mission Control. Jesus Christ. Mission Control is, those things I'm not doing now. You let people know I'm not doing that now. And you got to have, as a leader, you got to have room for the people on your team to say, I'm not doing that now, unless you want me to take something out of the keeping the business running stuff. Right. You show me where in the calendar you expect me to do that, because this is how long it takes me to keep the business going. You want me to do all these other things. There's no room in the calendar right now. So unless you're going to give these things that are in my calendar to someone else, I don't have, literally, there's no hour in the day for me to do those things. You can't expect me to get that done. And there's got to be that back and forth between leaders and the team to be able to say that kind of thing. And I think that's really what people need to grapple with, is that they don't have a time management issue. They have a word management issue. And that's what you're pointing to there.
Yeah. And I think you had mentioned two things. The first was, controlling your environment. Shazad talks a little bit in the PQ stuff about that you're really managing three variables. You manage yourself, right, which is the heavy focus around emotional and positive intelligence. You manage others, right? Those are the other variables, right, on how they react and how you react to them. And you deal with, not necessarily manage, the environment, right? And those are the only three things. And the key is that most leaders, or I found most managers in particular, focus on the others and the environment, and they really don't spend the time on themselves. So if they can really do an inward focus, and it's hard, right? Because it's basically where you're kind of, it's the come to Jesus meeting of like, you're coming to say, hey, you know what? I am not infallible. I can screw up. And that's okay. Cause that's, the other thing I do with people I coach is, tell me a story about a situation where you learned the most, right? That was life-changing for you, and I'd say it's got to be 100%, it's a major failure, right?
Yep.
Right. And then my question is if you know that that's where you get that degree of knowledge, then why are you spending all of your time avoiding failure, right? That's where the learning is going to happen. You're not trying to fail. The thing is if you can take that little bit of a stretch, where you have a little bit of the worry that you're talking about, and this aligns really well with anyone that's studied flow, or the work that Dr. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi had done. It's really kind of getting just into a little anxiety so you can get in flow. And those that are not familiar with flow, it was retermed in the 90s as being in the zone. It's where your challenge and skill meet, and you have the right challenge for the right skill, and you kind of get in that zone, and you look up at the clock and it's like 4 hours later than it should be. It's like, oh my God, that's real. If you can get your employees there, that's where you're going to get that massive creativity, job satisfaction, and engagement. And too often we really don't spend enough time trying to figure that out. We say, oh, you've got a great skill at this. And at the same point in time, it's like, well, you've done it 100 times. What am I going to learn from that? Yeah, you're fast at doing that and you do it really well. Is that really going to build you and contribute to you as a product? And usually the answer is no. And that's more of the kind of the 90-day Wall Street model.
Yeah.
I like if I sort of started to wrap this up with just a zoom out perspective, which is, if Aaron and I go for a walk in the woo-woo woods, like we're entering the age of Aquarius, old systems are dying, new systems are rising. I think this brings me a lot of hope, because I think in the space of the way we've done things for a long time. We've allowed our saboteurs to sort of run the show for a long time. We have a very top-down hierarchical model that has run these our country, our businesses for a long time. I think with the rise of positive intelligence, with more people embracing mindfulness, looking at the saboteurs and bringing balance to and perspective around, how do I move forward in a way that is from a sage brain and not a saboteur brain? Like, this is what gives me hope for what's coming, what's rising, and it's happening more and more. I'm hearing it more and more. So you having the work you do, Kevin, is an expression of what I see happening more and more. And it gives me hope that, we're bringing a new operating system to the way that we create results in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. And another thing I'd say, Chris, is it's good. It's really good for business, right? This is a good investment for business. And I'll close by saying the 125 managers that I had just done I had a senior manager. He moved into a new company. He went from having a staff of 80 to having a staff of 400, and they were getting ready to do this major shift, which is, downsizing significantly. And he said, I want all my managers to be ready for the downsize. It's going to happen in December. Let's get them all trained on this. And we were able to get them all trained before Thanksgiving. And here's the bottom line. When they did the organizational health survey of the 7 organizations, all of the organizations came in the range of 40 to 50%, job satisfaction, org health kind of thing. He came in at 79.
Excellent.
Wow. So anyway, so it's really about, it's that forward looking, not worrying, but the forward looking of how can I set my people up for success? So when this massive change happens, that they are prepared with the right tools to have their saboteurs quieted and their sage brain energized. And I think the numbers really speak for themselves.
Fabulous. Well, let's just end it there, and we'll put the link to the PQ survey in the show notes for people. And Kevin, really appreciate the work you're doing in the world. It's a gift, and we really appreciate your taking the time to be with us and let people know that these kind of tools and concepts and practices exist and where they can go. So Kevin, if people want to get a hold of you.
Yeah. So if people want to get a hold of me, you can send me an email, kevin@magnaleadership.com, MAGNA leadership.com. I always love getting emails from people. And if you'd like to schedule some time on my calendar, I'll send you the link to my calendar. The thing that I'll promise all of your listeners is you'll get absolutely zero sales pitch. You will not get a sales pitch from me. I will listen. I will make some recommendations. And if there's some things I can provide, great. And if there's not, I'm sure that I can point you in a direction that will help with your career and success, right? So that's my promise to you.
Excellent.
Awesome.
All right.
Good.
Well,
thanks, Kevin.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody for listening. Thanks for being here. Aaron, do you want to point anybody to your stuff?
Yeah, sure. If people are interested, I've got a wait list going for Living a Grateful Life in a Fucked Up World. That's a 9-week mindful meditation training. That's a free 9-week program, and the March cohort is filling. So if people want to make requests about what day and time they want that course to be, they can go to thegratefulbreath.com and save themselves a spot and ask for the day, week that works best for them. And so that's what we got going next.
Love it. Love it. So good. I guess lastly, if you guys want to learn more about Business Church, which is a project I'm working on, you can go to businesschurch.co and pick up the latest message there. And then as always, leave us a message, leave us a review. If you're watching this on YouTube, like, heart, subscribe, whatever. And we'll catch you in the next one. Thanks, everybody.